And that sense of urgency, people say to me, well, you showed kids, right? And they can't even open accounts yet. But as you've indicated, it's now. They're working with their phones. They've got debit cards. Their 10-year-olds are doing this. And so the question becomes, how do we capture that 7 seconds? And that was fascinating for me. So what if the terms become a little bit more active, like financial justice, like financial democracy? Using terms that are relative to the movement, to the social part of making the world better. I know that people will say it's our business to serve the community, and I know that we're in a position to where we stay in those lanes and our messaging stays in those lanes. But what hit us the most during the pandemic? Those commercials and branding where they reached out and they showed people playing horns and people getting together to celebrate life and their connection. And as I look to the future, that 7 seconds is going to be a guiding light for me, because literally I know we have to be ready.
We have work to do, certainly. I think that's one of my big takeaway, and that starts with that reflection awareness. At the same time, being almost approaching 50 years old now, but let's go back to the roots, ask the kids, and that's where not only listening and observing, engaging them, mobilizing them, and being part of defining what should be the language, what should be the narrative that they can relate to. Because some of the things that kids' videos were showing about, they care about environment, they care about the planet, they care about their future. How are we unpacking programs around that? They obviously showed they want to take charge, so that there's strong entrepreneurship. So they just don't want to be reactive and be told by businesses or adults. They want to build it themselves. Let's bring them into, and I heard a lot about discrimination, to your point, and that's all around, they care about belonging. They don't have categories. They don't have segmentations. They are looking for unity. So there's probably an opportunity for us just not only to listen, but mobilize and engage them in creating the narrative and the language that will appeal to that constituent.
And I want to just add a comment. In my comments, I made the note that we have to demonstrate the authenticity before we do the reach out. And once we open this door, there's the potential for people to examine it closer. And are we measuring our impact? Are we demonstrating that we can make a difference? Gary?
Yep, I would say hope pops into my mind. As we heard all the speakers today, the activists, sure, also our credit union leaders globally, I have hope. I have a lot of hope. There's some amazing, talented leaders and individuals who are speaking out on behalf of credit unions because they're speaking out on behalf of people, right? And so I have hope. I have a lot of hope around that. I also am a little uncomfortable. Sue, when you were using words like financial justice and words like financial democracy and we've used words like fight, right? Those are powerful words in our industry, and they're not words necessarily that we're used to. Sometimes we try to, you mentioned swimming in our lanes or staying in our lanes. Sometimes we're so careful with our words. And I know as a person, I'm oftentimes so careful in my words because I don't want to mess it up and I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? And yet I'm uncomfortable with these words, and that is a good thing. In fact, that's a really good thing. I think we should not strive for consensus so much as we do, but really be uncomfortable with it because it's the right thing to do. Because frankly, that's what these young people not only ask of us, they require of us. They demand, maybe that's even stronger. They demand of us to do that. And we can do it. We absolutely can. But it's going to take a whole lot of vulnerability and a whole lot of uncomfortable. You know, I started squirming in my chair just talking about this because it makes me uncomfortable. And I think that's awesome.
I agree. And at the end of the one video, it says, "You have not seen anything yet." which to me was a call to action.
Absolutely.
A call for all of us to get a little uncomfortable and maybe take a look at our practices, as you said, in a new way. And look at it not from the standpoint that we haven't been successful, because we are, right? We saw that. The global connection reinforces that message for me, because 1 billion people that we touch worldwide, we have a huge delivery channel. If we put it in business terms, right? We have a way of getting the message out. And you mentioned social media. We know that we've seen the bank transfer day, right?
Yes.
We've seen social media have an impact. We just have to find the language to make that happen. And you talked about the idea of kind of the different sizes and assets of credit unions and their approach to their communities, right?
Yes.
And as that evolves, what does that look like? So any thoughts on that, Shazia, for our industry leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, we have a strong root. So let's expand the roots, just not go vertically, but go horizontally. And that will come from trying new things, building new programs, maybe going into the lanes that historically we haven't been. Some of the basic necessity type of support. I mean, you talked about care, safety. It's not emotional security, but also physical security, financial security. How do we manifest those through proof points of programs that reaches our boundaries around building community? But ultimately, it's the connection and amplification of the messaging and mobilizing. And that's the beauty of social media. We have seen that you can mobilize these movement just through engagement and the messaging, which is authentic and relevant. So I think that's one way of thinking about
amplifying the voice. And that comes from the opportunity for us to be united.
Yes.
And our purpose is united. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to push this one or poke the bear, because we all believe in people helping people. We all believe in the core social mission that we're, as you said, stumbled into. But as we move forward, that being uncomfortable is a difficult thing, Gary. So how does that affect our leadership?
Right. I think in some ways we need to be even more collaborative. As an industry, we're very collaborative. And Shaz, you talked about that. We need to get out of our lanes sometimes. We need to push the envelope out of our lanes, because we know at the end of the day, the purpose is true and honorable. Collaboration is something we have to look at even more so. And again, that's going to make us uncomfortable, because sometimes it's easier just to do it, right? But I'm going to add multiplication to that. When we collaborate and truly collaborate, when we do that together, we can multiply the impact way greater than if any of us try to do it ourselves. We talk about getting, being, and staying proximate, right? How do we go right there and get proximate and stay proximate with those we're serving? You know, they say that those closest to the pain are those closest to the solution. And I go back to the young people and the voices and the role models. Are we asking them, right? Are we asking them and truly hearing what they say? Because they probably have some pretty good answers on what to do. I go back to James. James said, credit unions should offer programs for kids. James also said, credit unions should feed people, right? He talked a lot about that. And that's what our industry is known for. When we come together, nobody can stop us. And it's not just providing loans, right? It's feeding people, right? It's providing hope, and it's providing dreams. We can do that. And it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take multiplication, and it's going to take proximity.
An amplification of voice, because
Absolutely.
we know story after story of how people are doing things. I want to share. I received a text from one of our clients a moment ago, and they said immediately, "This collision's fantastic. I think we need a youth council, and we need to listen, and we need to get started to find more James Rice models." Right? And so I thought to myself, yes, that's an idea into action. That's something that they will take away and go home to this is a board member. And the idea that they'll share that now, they'll share that concept. But Are we, again, ready for when they come to the table? Our boards, I'll mention them for a moment. Our boards need to be willing to have younger voices at the table. Our entire organization, we have young people within our organizations. And so are we using that, to be a conduit to hear and to listen?
Yes, simple task. We all have employees, and we have a lot of employees who have children between 11 and 16 and 18. Maybe we start there and look to kind of mobilize and listen and engage, and then put together some type of a framework and take it out to draw more, and then have them be the voice.
Yes.
And push the message to resonate. Again, going back to it, three of us can talk all day long, but in what way they will listen, I don't know, but they will listen to their own if they are, being the messenger of this beautiful industry mission and the work we do. So I think, but that is transformational thinking as opposed to transactional thinking, because obviously we know what business we are in. It's very transactional. We need to move beyond that.
Yep. I would say all those kids we heard on the video, the whole session, when they were using their voices, what if those voices were credit union voices that they were sharing? They were talking about, like you said, they're talking about the environment, they're talking about these other things. What if those voices were credit union voices?
Yes.
To the text you got, more James Rice's. Now, by the way, I'm going to look at the camera. Q Mutual's already got dibs on James, right? So I think he's already got a job offer in place. So we'll have to find somebody else.
That was so clever. And that was so, so nice. And it showed such authentic leadership on Bob's part. So you're right. And so from an ideas into action perspective, we're pushing forward on the idea of the next generation. And we want to change the frame of reference. We don't want to think of it as the generation that has already made the transition. They already have financial services. Why aren't we speaking to the 10, 11, to the 18 years old that we're now focusing on? And so we're passionate. And so the question comes down to, how do we take this to the world? And we're going to ask our audience, you need to have your takeaways and your ideas into action as you move into the future.